Hello, everybody. Jason from MisprintedMTG.com, and welcome to another episode of Misprint Masterclass. Today on the desk we have fillers. So we're going to go in depth about fillers. Rather than show you every single filler in my collection, I thought this video would be a lot more informative if I just went over some of the finer points of fillers, some of the things that you may or may not know, just the details that a filler collector might have, and I can pass that on to you. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, there are technically four different things that are used to classify a filler. You have the design on the front, the design on the back, the type of cardstock that the filler is printed on. Now, this could be your normal Magic cardstock with the blue core. It could be foil on one side, foil on both sides. There's a whole different variety. Even from the vaults, have different cardstock. So the specific cardstock that it has is one of the identifying factors of a filler. Stamping is something that we use to differentiate fillers from one another. So this is an all black foil filler, and it's denoted as a unique version because of the stamp for the pre-release glory. And that's all four things: cardstock, front, back, and stamping. Now, technically speaking, there is a fifth thing that is used to differentiate fillers, and that's the corners. If you look on the libraries, you'll see that there are individually assigned numbers to fillers based off of having square corners. I personally don't include square corner fillers on my completionist checklist. They're really cool to have. I have an unconfirmed theory that they come directly from inside sources, whether it be a Wizards of the Coast employee or a printing facility person. But I categorize these based off of the four aforementioned categories when identifying fillers. Now, sources of fillers is something important to talk about. So, as I mentioned, these square corner fillers most likely come from Wizards of the Coast employees or insider factory people. That's the second source we see for fillers. The primary source of fillers is finding them in sealed product. They're supposed to be collated out, and instead they're not. So when talking about fillers, these are your three base models. I call them base models because they're the most commonly used filler. You have the all white with black borders, you have the discard filler, and you've got the barcode filler. This barcode scans to drop three, like quote unquote drop three, if you were to scan it. These are the most common fillers, and there are a whole bunch of variants of these fillers. If you want to see all the variants of them, go check out the libraries. He has most of them documented. Now, let's take a closer look at discards. One of the cool things about discards is the orientation of the word discard. On all of the non-foil versions, it goes from the bottom upwards. On all of the foil versions, it goes from the top down. Well, that rule applies to every single variant of the discard filler that we have found, except the variant where it doesn't, and here's a non-foil one where it goes from the top down. So this is a much rarer variant of the discard filler. In theory, it exists without the holo stamp as well. It might be really difficult for people to pick this one up because with a normal Magic back, they may not be paying attention to the orientation of discard. So keep an eye out. If you find one without a holo stamp, you've discovered a new filler. Let's talk about X fillers. So there's a whole bunch of fillers that use X's on them. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about with the X's is that every single X is different from one another. It's the angle of the X, the positioning of it, the thickness. They're very close, these two look very similar, but we could actually see on this Kamigawa X, it's much more narrow compared to the Black Border X, which is a much wider one. Obviously, on this alternate 4th edition filler, it's a big solid X. And the foil filler the foil X filler has the X near the corners, so it covers most of the card. And last but not least is the Strixhaven X filler, where you actually have this wiggly line X that was made in Photoshop based off of the brush settings, which is why you get that effect. So we have a whole bunch of different variants of X's, and every single one of them is different from one another, which is really cool because what that tells us is that on each of these individual sheets, the X was drawn specifically for that sheet. It wasn't brought from a pre-existing file. Now, another thing I would like to discuss are fillers that actually have art on them. There's a very few number of them. Actually, there's just these 4. So obviously they put a big old X over the island for this one. This cold snap filler is normal on the front and has these black gray bars on the back. We've got the chiller filler, which is the full art card of Chiller Pillar that they just went and slapped a barcode on top of. One of the really neat things about this filler is that the white box has rounded corners compared to any other filler where you have a sharp corner. What that rounded corner tells us is that they just took their existing art file and they slapped a box right on top of it. When they did this, they used a rounded rectangle as opposed to a knockout of a square rectangle, well, with hard corners. And we've also got our Zendikar Rising filler. So these all have remnants of art on them, and I just wanted to show you the different variants of the fillers that have art on them. Now, one of the things that I want to discuss is these black and gray bars on the back. There's actually a whole bunch of fillers that have black and gray bars on the back. And I think this is a really good time to point out that I believe that these are all the backs of the cards. The black and gray bars are all exactly the same size. They're in the same position. And clearly, based off of this cold snap filler, it's on the back. Now, there is one exception to this rule. This is the Innistrad filler, where we know that the black and gray bars are not on the back, they're on the front. So in every other instance, and besides the Innistrad's filler, those black and gray bars are on the backs of the fillers. And that's important because for some of these guys, we don't know which is the front and which is the back, but I would like to assume that the ones that all match follow the cold snap filler. Let's take a closer look at our black and white fillers. There are 3 variants of these in foil. The difference is the white underprinting on each of these. So this one here is probably the most common of the 3 variants, and you can see that the black on this filler blends in perfectly with the border. That's because it has a full white underprinting on the border and on the black side of the filler. And we can see on the left-hand side, there's no white underprinting at all, so we just have raw foil stock. The next variant, this is also a foil card. Don't know if I'll be able to get it to reflect any of the foil. Previously, it was thought that this was a non-foil variant, and actually on the libraries, it's not even listed as foil, but this is in fact on foil cardstock. This is a foil where it has foil underprinting, white underprinting on the left-hand side, full 100% white. On the right-hand side, it has almost 100%, and on the borders, it has 100%. So we get a little bit of the foil effect on the right-hand side. If you shine a light, let's see if I can pull up my phone's flashlight real quick, see if I could show you the effect. You can see the foil effect on the black side, and it's actually there on the white side as well, but it's not going to show up because of the cameras. So this is the second variant of the black-white filler. And the third variant is the same as the previous variant, where you've got difference in underprinting between the black side and the borders. However, there's no underprinting on the white side, so this is just blank foil cardstock. So there's 3 variants of this particular filler, all having to do with the white underprinting layer. Now, let's talk about solid black fillers. It's really important with solid black fillers to do a foil check on them. If you have a solid black filler, just take a phone, your flashlight, hold it over the filler, and if it's a foil filler, you'll actually get that little iridescent prism showing up. Sometimes people think they just have a regular all black filler, where in reality they have a foil black filler. It's very difficult to distinguish those by eye without the use of a light. While we're on the topic of all black fillers, I figured now would be a good time to bring up the foil shooting star filler, if my camera wants to focus. All right, I guess we're gonna show it off close. There we go. This filler is really important to have solid provenance on. There are non-factory cut versions of this filler out in the wild. There's quite a few of them. So if you find yourself in the market for one of these fillers, make sure that you can get a solid chain of ownership on it, going back to either the factory or, you know, something solid, because you don't want an NFC version of one of these fillers. They're much more rare and they're much more cool if they are confirmed from the factory. Now, these are really interesting. One of these is a filler and the other is not. Now, how do we know the difference between the two? Well, a filler has gone through all of the printing processes, including the varnish coat. So the way to distinguish a filler from a piece of cardstock that hasn't been printed on is to look at that gloss coat. So as we move the card in the light, you can see that the gloss coat is nice and uniform and solid. There's a dent in the middle of this card, unfortunately, but it's one of the few all-white fillers, confirmed fillers, that I've been able to find. Now, if we compare that to this Jumpstart card that wasn't printed at all, you can actually see it's a very modeled pattern, right? It's not a uniform varnish coat at all. So that's how you tell the difference between unprinted cardstock. You know, it has a magic back, right? The back was printed and it got its varnish coat, but the front was unprinted and it didn't get its varnish coat. So not a filler, filler. Let's take a quick time to discuss our M fillers. I'm only going to bring up 3 variants of the M filler because the other ones are one-ofs. So the M filler right here, the white M filler, is the most common version of the M fillers. And you could actually see in the light, just barely, that there is a ring around the M. Now this comes in varying levels of visibility. Some M fillers have this a lot more visible than others, and others you can barely see it at all, like this one. This is the super dark M filler. A lot of people confuse these for all black fillers, but if you look at them, you can see that it has that M and that circle on it. This is a very rare filler. I think there are only 10 confirmed copies in existence, but I figured I'd show it to you guys anyway. Now this, I like to call this the white M filler. Some people call it the gray M filler. This is an extremely rare M filler. Very, very hard to find, but I figured since we're discussing M filler variants, I'd show it to you guys. They're single digits in population, I think maybe 6 or 7 of them, but just a good thing to know that exists. The other M fillers that are out there, there's 2 more variants, and they are both one-ofs, so I figured they aren't worth discussing in this video. Now, it's also worth noting that any printed magic product has the ability to have a filler. So this is a filler from the world's smallest decks product. And it's also possible to have oversized fillers. So this is a filler from a commander product. And last but not least, I want to show off some fillers from some other card games because fillers are not exclusive to Magic the Gathering. And you can get some really cool looking ones from other products. This one's from a WWE card game, but I love this checkerboard pattern on it. And this is a really cool filler from Pokemon where it's albino on the front and normal on the back. Well, I hope you've learned some things and gotten an idea for the nitty and gritty details of fillers that kind of are out there. Thank you for watching this video. I will see you next time.